week on Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. What defines the character of a city? Of course, it's people and history, but there's also the infrastructure.
From sidewalks to bikeways to highways, the ways we get around and what we choose to invest in can make a good city great.
Funding is always a challenge. Not all communities have extensive transportation plans.
From urban planning to public transit, we'll explore how different communities are rethinking mobility to meet their own unique needs. Welcome to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Denver7's Micah Smith.
And I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Fernando Frescas. Each week in a partnership between Denver7 and CPR, we have a Real Talk about issues impacting underrepresented people across Colorado and amplifying voices you may not always hear.
When you think of what would make a good city great, safety and security, accessibility, cleanliness, good paying jobs, and a plentiful workforce might come to mind.
But what about the traffic median, the light rail crossing, or bike paths? Those things might not be as exciting as a new farmer's market or restaurant, but those physical, tangible features are so important to a city's growth and sustainability.
Important, but in Colorado they might be lacking, according to a recent report card. The American Society of Civil Engineers gave Colorado a C- grade for its public infrastructure.
That's just below the national average of a C, but that lack of good infrastructure or infrastructure that's in good condition can cost you time, money, and even your health.
So if we think of infrastructure as the bones of our community, how are city planners working to improve our cities? Joining us now is Carrie Makarowitz from the University of Colorado, Denver. She's an associate professor and chair of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning. Carrie, thank you so much for being here for this Real Talk.
Oh, thank you.
There is a lot to talk about when it comes to urban design and planning, but could you give us a quick overview of what you do and what urban and regional planning is?
Sure. So urban planning is a field that we use a lot of public processes. We use all different types of data, both qualitative and quantitative, on housing, jobs, transportation, the environment, economics. And we try to bring that all together to look at what can we do to address the problems we see in cities today and plan for the growth that we're expecting down the road. And so in that future planning orientation of the field, we're both addressing gaps, challenges, and issues today, but also making sure they don't get worse while we're also building and accommodating new jobs, new people, making sure there's parks in place. So it's really the field that coordinates a lot of different systems so that we can live healthy lives in the places where we live.
So when you're teaching urban planning 101 and those, freshmen come in, what do you say to them about what are we doing here? How are we going to make this work, make a good city great?
I just left my planning methods class and I start with people and I tell them, we are planners because we care about the well-being of individuals of all ages, whether you're a toddler or a 12-year-old middle school student, whether you're in college, you just got out of college, your early career, you're an older adult without a car and you live alone, you're a single parent with 2 jobs and 3 kids. We start with them, with the range of people we're trying to accommodate in our cities, and think about all the things they need to live their daily lives. They need transportation, they need housing, they need nearby grocery stores and food that they can afford. They need parks and places to go and recreate and meet other people so that they have social community connections. They need health care and access to it, not just access through insurance, but access that's easy to get to, whether by car, bus, rail, or walking.
Yeah, Carrie, when we think about Denver specifically, what are some of the Denver Metro's strengths when it comes to infrastructure?
I mean, the strength is that we've made a massive investment in our light rail and commuter rail system. And few regions around the country have done that. There was the cities that did this initially, Chicago and New York and Boston. But then for decades, we didn't have cities opening new light rail lines or commuter rail. And so as a region, we got together and we did make massive investments in rail. We also have a regional planning agency, the Denver Regional Council of Governments, that goes by DRCOG. They coordinate 59 member governments to make decisions, and they do that collaboratively, and they identify their problems. They set good goals for improving the quality of life for the region. We also have an extensive trail system through parts of the region. Our state DOT, CDOT, is doing a lot of innovation with things like Bus Tang, the regional commuter bus service. They're doing bicycle and pedestrian planning. They're planning bus rapid transit on some of the state-owned roads. So we do have some of the infrastructure in place that connects key employment centers, key population centers, and agencies that are working together to try to expand it, improve it, and run it on a daily basis.
And theoretically, that should all work together, right? Sidewalks, bike paths,
Yes.
highways, they should work in harmony, but often they compete with each other, right? You have people, let's say in Colfax Avenue, trying to cross. They may not be in a safe space. You may have, we're going to talk later about getting to light rail and having that first mile, last mile problem. Is there like a magic touch that you can add as an urban planner that kind of makes everything work in harmony? Because right now, sometimes it seems it doesn't work in harmony.
Right. I mean, and one of the problems is funding is always the challenge. Funding for sidewalks is scarce, if non-existent. And it's controlled by the local governments, and many local governments ask their property owners individual parcels to finish off the sidewalks. So you have a lot of discontinuity in our sidewalk system, a lot of gaps, a lot of dangerous sidewalks or people walking in the shoulder. So those are all those little governments, and they're controlled areas where they need to plan the sidewalks to connect to a regional rail, which is another entity. And there may be a state road going through a city, and that's controlled by CDOT. Some of our streets are owned by multiple cities, counties, and the state, and different. It depends on which section. But as a user, you drive down that road as one segment on your trip, or you walk down it or bike down it, and so it takes a lot of coordination. And we are a pretty sprawled out region, and so there are miles and miles of development, of housing and jobs and commercial centers that cross over these jurisdictional boundaries with different funding sources, different planning timelines. So that's another issue, is when the regional agency is doing their planning timeline with federal funds, the local city doing their planning timeline, and then we don't require local transportation planning in the state. And so not all communities have extensive transportation plans, and they don't always involve their neighboring communities on the other side of their jurisdictional political boundaries. It's getting better, and there are some pockets throughout the region where cities collaborate, and Littleton's been leading a regional effort on some of the roads that go through that city and their surrounding areas, and Littleton's in 3 counties. So that's another complexity. So you have a lot of people working on different timelines with different funding sources or no funding, trying to build out an infrastructure system that we as users want to be seamlessly connected, but it's on paper and in budgets, it's not connected.
It's not connected.
Yeah, it takes a lot of coordination, and we hear from viewers all the time with kind of jurisdictional issues when you have, one jurisdiction covering multiple counties. So a really interesting breakdown there. Carrie McCarowitz, Associate Professor and Chair of the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at the University of Colorado, Denver. Thank you so much for joining us for this Real Talk. And there is one historic Denver neighborhood that has seen both good and bad infrastructure projects over the years.
Coming up, we'll learn about how some of those changes have roots in racism and segregation.
This is Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Fernando Frescas.
And I'm Denver7's Micah Smith. This week we're focusing on infrastructure, the systems that keep a city running. From the water pipes to sidewalks and highways, how we build and invest in these essentials shapes daily life for the people who live here.
But infrastructure, or a lack of it, also can be used as a form of segregation, like with what's known as redlining. In the 1930s, Denver saw the use of redlining as a way to keep black residents and other people of color confined to certain neighborhoods. Banks and lenders used the practice to decide who was, quote, most desirable for lending and investment.
As a result, neighborhoods like 5 Points, Whittier, and San Rafael were places that saw a distinct lack of investment.
But today, the Whittier neighborhood is a vibrant and close-knit community that's ethnically diverse, and it's growing. And a big player in making that happen is the Whittier Neighborhood Association.
Joining us now is Danny Havlick of the Whittier Neighborhood Association. Danny, thanks so much for being here for this Real Talk.
Thanks, great to be here.
So how long have you lived in the Whittier neighborhood?
I moved in August 2020, so about 5 years.
And what made you move there?
The walkability, the old homes, the density of it, and then as we've been there, learning how great the people are, and as more businesses come in and the neighborhood really develops, it's been really great.
So give us more of a snapshot of what life is like there. What's it look like? What's it feel like? Give people who maybe live in Grand Junction a little bit of a taste of your neighborhood.
And I genuinely think like it's the best neighborhood in Denver. My wife and I would talk about that every time we're walking or biking around the neighborhood. The access to businesses like the coffee shops, we're getting new restaurants all the time. Rhino's just a few blocks over. There's incredible parks in the neighborhood. Like we've got 5 parks in a small neighborhood. Like it's just wild density.
Yeah.
It's just this this incredible mix of like livability and access that I think is really hard to beat anywhere else.
Yeah, I can feel the love you have for your neighborhood.
I really do.
This episode is about infrastructure. Can you give us an idea of what infrastructure looks like in Whittier and maybe how it's changed even since you've been there?
And infrastructure can be anything from when I first moved in, they were doing a massive storm drain replacement that I think was one of those like put off for 50 years because it was deprioritized by the city. And so they were tearing up streets for that. And then we were one of the first neighborhoods to get the new water lines. I think as again kind of a restitution type thing for being ignored for so long. But it's also things like we've been really getting a lot of bicycle infrastructure. We're getting the neighborhood bikeways that are going in now. I think we had a pretty early protected bike lane up on MLK and 31st. And we're starting to get some sidewalks replaced, which is great because as someone with a young child, strollers on these flagstone sidewalks is pretty rough.
Yeah, right. And in terms of, the historical aspect of this neighborhood, having, like you said, all of that infrastructure deferred for so long, and having families like yours move in, do you still feel the historical pull to the neighborhood that made it famous for so long as being a place where people of color were kind of, made to live for so long without having that accessibility? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and absolutely. I think it is really important to try and remember that history and not let a neighborhood completely turn over, to remember that cultural value that is there. It's still a very diverse neighborhood. I know I think it used to be like 90% non-white, and now it's down to like 30 or 40, but different areas in the neighborhood, that percentage really varies. I'm over on the eastern end, a lot closer to, western end, closer to Downey, and
Sure.
We were very surprised to see a white teenager the other day. Like it hasn't, it is really times are changing, but the history is really valued by a lot of us. I know me and the other people on the board, we really dig into like the histories of the individual houses. I looked up, I think I found the bill of sale for my house when it was first sold in 1900. Wow. Like learning that and remembering that is really important, and definitely remembering the history of how the city has treated its residents and how it was through different eras of Denver is really important, and how that carries and how that has impacts even today.
Yeah.
Well, and hearing how important history is to you, I want to go a little bit deeper when you were talking about demographics. We know historically redlined communities like Whittier often don't see investment until we do see demographics begin to shift. Do you feel like race plays a role in when and where investment happens, or do you think that pertains to Whittier at all, or do you think it was just simply time to invest?
I think it 100% is getting people who have, squeakier wheels come in, and people who have the connections, who have the time, the leverage. Like it's as much as it's absolutely a race thing. As things get whiter, you get a little more attention, you get paid more, but it's also as incomes go up in the area and you get people with like much more regular 9-to-5s who can go to the evening community meetings. And I've gone to these meetings, and the attendance at these meetings do not, at a city council meeting or whatever, do not in any way match the kind of people I see around my neighborhood, around on my block.
Yeah.
That's such an interesting point to make, that even just having a 9-to-5 is a privilege to where you can actually show up for a community meeting.
What would you say to people who are concerned that with involving infrastructure, home prices will rise and the face of your neighborhood may change?
I think it's really important to not try and to not turn down improvements to qualities of life just because like we have a housing crisis, like costs are going up everywhere, all across the city, all across the country. And I think trying to, you hear things, people joke about like firing off guns to like keep the home values down, things like that. And I don't think that's productive. I think we should always want our neighborhood to be improved. And ideally that will come with additional housing, additional density, additional access, such that there's not so much displacement. That is the real problem.
Danny Havlick of the Whittier Neighborhood Association, thank you so much for being here for this Real Talk.
Yeah, happy. Thank you.
Well, one of the most visible parts of a city's infrastructure is our ability to move around.
When one grad student saw a glaring gap in transit access in his neighborhood, he decided to do something about it.
Next, find out what he did and how it's working. This is Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News.
Welcome back to Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. I'm Colorado Public Radio's Nathan Fernando Frescas.
And I'm Denver7's Micah Smith. Infrastructure plays a major role in building a strong, connected city, and public transit is a big part of that.
In Denver, RTD is hoping improvements like the Colfax Bus Rapid Transit line, set to be complete in a few years, will make it easier for the community to move around the city.
But for many in Denver, actually getting to a bus or train line just isn't feasible. Whether it's too far to walk or too short to drive, our next guest says that first mile gap often keeps people from taking transit altogether.
So when he was presented with a class project as a University of Denver graduate student, he decided to create a plan to fix that. Joining us now is DU graduate student Joel Cox. Joel, thanks for being here for this Real Talk.
It's great to be here.
So give us the quick backstory. What was the problem and what was your solution?
Yeah, as you mentioned, it was a grad school assignment, just very general. Come up with a solution that improves your city's transportation system. I was really focused on the last mile challenge. So that's, people that are not within a short walking distance of transit. So in Denver, that's 75% of us. And, it's a really big gap. And I started by not asking myself what's the perfect solution, but what is the most efficient and cost-effective way to close this gap. And that's what led me to leveraging our micromobility infrastructure, so e-bikes and e-scooters, because that's something that we own and maintain, so it's a lot more cost-efficient. And the solution is pretty simple. So if it's any e-bike or e-scooter that ends at a public transit stop, the cost of your first mile is free. So if it's under a mile, it's totally free, and there's no sign up needed. You just hop on a scooter, park at an approved transit stop, and you see your discount applied instantly.
That is so genius.
Yeah.
So you submitted this plan to RTD to solve the first mile problem. Tell us about what that entailed.
So there was quite an advocacy journey that led up to the grant applications, a lot of different chapters. The first chapter was just pure research. Then there was what I call hallway pitches, so going to elected officials and trying to pitch it to them, have them look at me like I'm trying to sell life insurance or something, right? Then I started pitching it to agencies. There was more interest, but the answer was the same each time. We really don't have much money right now to fund something like this. And then I just turned to grassroots advocacy, doing public surveys, pitching to nonprofits, and just trying to show people that this is something that could really benefit the community. And then people said, hey, you need to apply for a grant. And that's when I teamed up with Mike Hughes at West Quarter TMA. He was the primary applicant and was just a great guy to work with. And this wouldn't have gotten across the finish line without him.
And so this isn't every RTD station. This is 2 stations. Where is this program going on?
Just 2 stations, the University of Denver station and then the Decatur Federal station.
And so if this program continues, would there be possibly an idea to maybe make it transit-wide or system-wide?
That's the goal. The purpose of this pilot is to really just see how this works on a smaller scale. And then if successful, we hope to scale citywide.
Yeah.
This is a really good idea. I know it's not a perfect solution, which is what you mentioned in the beginning, but why is this better than an alternative such as a shuttle service?
Yeah, it's a good question. So shuttle services, that is the most traditional model. And it's for a lot of people, right? If you have mobility related issues and you can't use a scooter, that's great for them. But for people who are open to using scooters, this is a lot more cost efficient. So shuttle services, you're paying for the drivers, the vehicles, the maintenance of the vehicles. It can actually cost over $100 per person to get them to transit. We can do that with the first mile free model with just $4.
Wow.
And so, a city like Denver that's really struggling with budget, budget deficit, it's solutions like that that are really going to drive results.
And did you find this idea in any other cities? Has this been done anywhere else before?
Yeah, so myself and my Qs, we're really proud of the fact that this is the first time this has ever been tested, and that's something that Lime verified in their letter of support. There's never been a model where if you park a vehicle at a transit stop, the cost of your trip is subsidized.
All right, Real Talk viewers and listeners, you heard it here first. Joel is a trailblazer when it comes to this. Joel, what metrics are you using just to kind of grade the success of this?
So first, it's year-over-year lift. Lime and Bird can both look to see if there's been an increase. And second to that, we're going to use in-app surveys and be able to ask people who use the program, is this program actually what is driving you to use public transit? And that way we can actually attribute that lift to an increase in ridership. So the evaluation phase is something that we feel really good about, and those are the two metrics we're gonna take a look at.
I really love how you were mentioning that you were doing hallway talks. You were just saying, this is a problem, this is a problem, this is a problem. It seems like, what if someone else is out there saying, I've got a problem in my neighborhood? What do you suggest for them to do?
Yeah, there's so many community-led ideas out there. I have a friend named Jude. She has an idea. She wants the city to fund renovations for her basement because it's so close to being rentable, right? And so that would just be a very low-cost way relative to building entirely new housing, right, to get more housing opportunity in the city. But I think because she's a citizen, there's kind of a stigma and this belief that it might not be the best idea. But there are so many community members who have great ideas, and I would just say keep fighting and definitely look for grant opportunities.
Yeah. What's next for you? What other infrastructure issue do you plan to tackle?
I'll be looking closely at the results of the pilot. I will say I'm interested in the sidewalks initiative. So that's going to be a huge source of CO2 for our city, about 300,000 metric tons. It's enough to make or break our city climate goals. And so I would like to potentially look into piloting a project where we find a building with crumbling sidewalks in front of it and say, hey, would you be interested in having low carbon concrete to fill this sidewalk? And I think that grant could structure research and also lead to like a very tangible public demonstration of what low carbon concrete can actually do for a community.
That's literally infrastructure. That is the concrete you're using to put in a sidewalk, and that
Absolutely.
could change so much for the city.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
All right, Joel Cox, graduate student at the University of Denver. Thank you for joining us for this Real Talk.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And that is this week's episode of Real Talk with Denver7 and CPR News. Every week, we have a Real Talk on issues that impact Coloradans who are often overlooked.
You can find all of our shows on denver7.com/realtalk or at cpr.org/realtalk. Have a great day.